This is the six, I believe, five or six, ratio table questions that you had for homework. So let's get to it. First one, 3 cups of water weigh 12 ounces. How heavy is 10 cups of water? I've already set up the table for you, and you're just completing the parts that aren't completed. So just look for connections between the numbers. This one's pretty straightforward. The first thing I need to get to is a ratio of 3 to 12 to 1 to something, and since I'm getting smaller, the only way to get there is to divide. So how do you get from 3 to 1? That's easy. 3 divided by 3. Whatever you do to one part of a ratio, you do the exact same thing to the other part of the ratio. So 12 divided by 3 would bring this to 4. So a 3 to 12 ratio is equivalent to a 1 to 4 ratio. Remember, everything in a table needs to be equivalent to one another. And then how do I get to 10? Well, it's a bit tricky to get from 3 to 10, not impossible, but the other part of the table makes it a lot easier. You can get from 1 to 10 super easy, just multiply by 10. And so I'd do the same thing on the other side of this table, times 10. 4 times 10 is 40. So your first table, 3 to 12, 1 to 4, and 10 to 40. And there's the connections I used to get from one number to the next. All right, for question 2, 5 boys can eat 16 slices of pizza, then how many boys can eat 64 slices of pizza? Now, this is the only part of the table that's needed to actually answer that question. I put an extra one in there in case you were having trouble getting from 16 to 64. I hope there wasn't too much trouble. Just to do the whole table, though, from 16 to 32 is times 2. So from 5 to something is times 2 as well. That would mean that if 5 boys can eat 16 slices, if you double that, 10 boys can eat 32 slices. And to get from 32 to 64, you could just do times 2. And so 10 times 2 would get you to a final answer of 20. You could have gotten there in just one step, though. 16 times 4 is 64. So 5 times 4 gets you to 20 as well. Ultimately, to answer this actual question, 20 boys can eat 64 slices of pizza if 5 can eat 16. But to complete the full table, there's all of the work to get that table completed. Pretty straightforward, fairly easy numbers. Let's move on to number 3. Sam can read 4 pages in 7 minutes. At this rate, how long will it take him to read 9 pages? So I set up this table to get you there pretty easily. If this 36 wasn't here, you'd have to have some sort of stopover. To get from 4 to 9, you could get from 4 to 9 directly, but it's sometimes easier just to get some sort of connecting number. So that's why I was guiding you there with this 36. If I go all the way up, so times 9 to 36, I can get from 36 to 9 by just dividing by 4. So I hope you see that connection. I won't always give that to you. I don't want to make it this obvious all the time, but in practicing, sometimes it's good to see those connections. And there's nothing wrong with making a ratio bigger just to bring it back down if it makes the numbers easier. Instead of trying to go directly from 4 to 9, this might be a helpful way to get there. And there's other numbers you could have used. I chose 36. But anyways, to finish this table, if I did from 4 to 36 is times 9, then from 7 to this next box would also need to be times 9. 9 times 7 is 63. So you can read 36, Sam can read 36 pages in 63 minutes, a bit over an hour. And then to scale this back down, I went from 36 to 9, divide by 4. I'm also going to need to divide by 4 for my second step here. We need to keep everything equivalent. So 63 divided by 4 gets you to the last part of this table, which is 15 and 3/4. No, I don't mind if it's a decimal or if it's a fraction. So acceptable answers would be 15.75, 15 and 3/4. I guess you could have also had 63/4, and I would have taken any of those answers. They're all equivalent, so any of those work. So in almost 16 minutes, 15 and 3/4 minutes, Sam can read 9 pages. If in 7 minutes, he can read 4 pages. All right, that brings us to the fourth question. A fast typist can type 120 words in 100 seconds. It's pretty crazy. At that rate, how many seconds would it take to type 258 words? So you could try to find some way to get directly from 120 to 258. I didn't want to do that, so I was trying to guide you to some other ways to get there. One way to get there is if I take 120 to 6, so you divide by 20. So 100 divided by 20, 5. Now, can you get from 6 to 258? Maybe you didn't realize this, but 6 can go directly to 258 by multiplying times 43. So that would mean you could do 43 times 5 and get 215, and that would actually answer the question that was being asked. Some people didn't see that though, so there's other ways to get there. So remember, the alternative is you can always add an extra piece to the table on the top or the bottom and take it to 1, because then you could do times 258 and get to where you want to get to. So to get from 120 to 1, I'll use a different color, you would just divide by 120. So that means 100 divided by 120 would give me this box here. That's going to be a decimal, or you could leave it as a fraction, 100 over 120, which is 10/12, which is 5/6. And then times 258 would get you to 215. So going from 120 to 1, and then 1 times 258 would bring you to this box. So follow that same pattern on the right side of the table. 100 divided by 120 gets me to this, times 258 would get me to 215. The numbers are a little wacky, but I'm not always going to make them super easy numbers, so be prepared to do a little bit of division occasionally, or a little funky multiplication sometimes. But there's number 4 for you if you've filled out the whole table. Number 5, I can see that getting from 24 to 8 is just to divide by 3, so that would mean this first box you can find by dividing by 3. And the reason I chose to add this extra line in here for you is because maybe you can't get from 24 to 40 directly, but if you simplify this ratio and go from 24 to 9 to an 8 to 3 ratio, I can pretty easily get from 8 to 40, just multiply by 5. So 3 times 5, and that gets me to 15. So final answer to this question, with 40 bucks, you could buy 15 burgers, at least at this snack bar where you can buy 9 burgers for $24. All right, and then for the last question here, the ratio of oil to vinegar is 8:5. How much oil must be blended with 7 ounces of vinegar? So I was thinking it's a little tricky to get directly from 5 to 7. So instead, I created a little stopover just to guide you a little bit. So I'm taking 5 up to 35 times 7, and then dividing to get to 7, 35 divided by 5. And now that I see the pathway to get there, 8 times 7 is 56. And then the last step is just to do the same division that you did on the right side of the table to the other part of the ratio. So divide by 5. And you should get a final answer of 11 2/10 if you're getting a decimal. If you're getting a fraction, that would be 11 1/5 or 56/5. Any of those answers would be acceptable. You don't have to go from 5 to 35 and then from 35 to 7. There's certainly other ways to go. I'm just showing one of the options to get there, just to get your brain, it's just training your brain to see how you can make connections within a ratio table. All right, there's this homework. If you've got questions, feel free to email me, come in for extra help. I'm happy to give you some more work on this. But all right, that's it for this. See ya.